6 videos, 6 seasons, 6 different tactics, 1 team. Roberto De Zerbi likes his team to sit deep, keep the studs on the ball, and attract opposition pressure. His players rarely pass the ball until the very last moment, so they need to be composed, focus very well, and find the best solution. But before we go to the tactic, we need to consider some of the attributes the players need to perform it. Because if your players don't have high ratings for these 3 attributes, they will buckle under pressure. As by keeping possession of the ball, the opponent will hardly have any other choice than to press. And what Roberto De Zerbi does best is to find the free man. The concept of the free man is the unmarked player. Usually, this is best created in groups of 3 players, with the 3rd player being the free man. By attracting the opposition onto your team early in the build-up phase, you force them to play with a very high defensive line, which in turn creates gaps, either after the pressing lines or behind the defense. Besides the attributes mentioned earlier, player traits are also important. As the match engine prioritizes player traits over anything else in the player's decision process, it is important for them to have role-related traits as much as possible. Of course, this depends on the level of the team you manage. Roberto De Zerbi sets up his team in a 4-2-3-1 most of the time, as once the press starts, the team shape switches to a double pivot box. The use of the double pivots enables the team to find a lot of space behind the first and the second line of the press. The danger is that if the double pivots are blocked, Roberto De Zerbi's tactic starts to crumble. In goal, we have a sweeper keeper on attack. He must become a field player as soon as the ball is in play. No special instructions for him. The wingbacks are both on attack duty as they will provide the width of the tactic. They need to see narrower to provide passing options in the build-up, but as soon as the ball moves from the defense, they must spring into attack. The central defenders are ball-playing defenders on defend, dribble less and tackle harder as special instructions. The midfield pivot is made of a static role, the deep line playmaker, and of a dynamic one, the segundo volante. The segundo volante is meant to be the one going forward when attacking. Dribble less and tackle harder for him, and pass it shorter and dribble less for the deep line playmaker. The wingers have 2 distinct roles, but the right one has a card up his sleeve that makes him more dangerous than normal wingers. On the left side, we have the inverted winger or the Mitoma role, attack duty and tackle harder. This player is meant to receive the ball and cut inside at the earliest opportunity or link up play and get into a dangerous situation. As I said, the winger has a more special role, and this is given by the player trait. Solly March can play in this role, but has a trait of cutting inside from the right wing. This means that every time he has the chance, he will cut inside. If not, he will continue down the wing and drag the opposing fullback after him. Tackle harder for him also. And the attacking double pivot is made of a shadow striker and a deep line forward on support. The deep line forward does exactly what the name says and comes deep to pick up the ball. By doing so, he most of the times ends up on the same line as the shadow striker. So this creates the double pivot effect Roberto De Zerbi masterminded for his team. Tackle harder for both and shoot more often for the striker. As mentality, I went with balanced as we need to pay attention to the wingbacks. On positive, their venture timing is a bit off. In possession, fairly wide, as we need to stretch the opposition, create the gaps when they press, and avoid the press in the same time. Play out of the defense and overlap on both wings. Shorter passing directness and standard tempo. In transition, we regroup, play on counter, and the ball must be distributed to the defense. We need to create the possession in our defensive area and the counter chances in the attack. Out of possession, high line of engagement and standard defensive line. Press much more often and prevent goalkeeper short distribution. As you can see, the pressing is created by the high line, high press instructions and the individual player instructions. When playing against the top teams in the league, I would change to this variation of the tactic. The main differences are the deep line playmaker role being more defensive minded, the striker pressing higher up the pitch and not participating in the possession game, and the playout of the defense instruction being taken out. The more disciplined is added. And the changes are made as the top teams, especially in England, know how to press. So we need to meet their skill with an attacker that is going to be a thorn in their defense and scoop up the loose balls, plus exercising our wide play advantage. Roberto De Zerbi is a tactics mastermind and an innovator. The concept of the free man and creating the tactic to find him through positional play caught most teams off guard last season. This tactic was a success for me, clearly, but I'm very interested to know how this tactic worked for you. Did you manage to find success with it? Having said this, let's unlock the next one. Welcome to the second video of the challenge of recreating 6 different tactics in 6 videos managing only one team. As we have seen in the last video, the Roberto De Zerbi recreation tactic worked wonders for Brighton. His finding the free man through positional play concept fit very well in the game. But the second tactic recreation was more difficult. I had to use my whole FM knowledge to make it work, but if you know what attributes and traits are needed, it becomes easier. But what are those? I'm glad you asked. The goalkeeper, the defense and the midfield should have high rating for this attribute. Positioning helps the players be in the best possible place when taking defensive positions. In attack though, off the ball and flair are the ones you should search for. And of course, concentration should not be neglected. Since playing without the ball is tiresome, the players must focus for longer periods of time. As player traits, brings ball out of defense, mark opponent tightly for the defense, dictates tempo and tries killer balls often for the midfield and attacking players, and move into channels for the strikers. As tactic, I went with an unconventional shape. Since Helenio Herrera is considered to be the father of the Catenaccio, the defensive style of play used through the 60s to the 80s, I had to recreate it. However, his Grande Inter was made of world-class players like Armando Picchi, Giacinto Facchetti, Luis Suarez, Jair and many others. For Brighton, even though I have great players, their caliber is nowhere near the Grande Inter. As a shape, we have a sort of a 3-4-3 formation. The most important part of the tactic is this one. If you get it right, your team will be very hard to break down. Sweeper keeper on defend duty, as he doesn't need to sweep any loose balls often. 3 at the back, who must be extremely flexible, mobile in possession and very disciplined. Wide center back on defend duty on the right side. This will help to escape the opposition pressure by offering a wide passing option. Take fewer risks for him. A libero support in the middle. This is the free player in defense. He's the one screening the defense and the last man standing in front of goal. Dribble less and hold position. Central defender on defend duty on the left side. No instructions for him. Helenio Herrera asks his defenders to mark the opposing attackers. And this is what we are going to do on a game-by-game basis. The libero has no marking instructions. In front of them, we have a defensive midfielder on defend duty. He is the screen in front of the defense. No instructions for him. On the left side, we have a complete wingback on attack duty. He will march on the left side defending attacks and creating chances for his team. No instructions for him. On the right side, we have the same scenario of the player marching the whole flank. Here, Denzel Dumfries or Achraf Hakimi would be the best players to use. Defensive winger or support is used as variety. The player will take on the opposing player early and will go up in attack when his team is in possession. A roaming playmaker on support links the defense to the attack. This player is the engine of the team. If he fails to perform, the whole tactic crumbles. No instructions for him and no pressure either. A shadow striker and a trequartista are behind the striker. The trequartista is used as it is a more free-spirited role. This player will go wider, cut inside, go into the opposition's box. All depends on the scenario he's faced with. Stay wider for him. And the striker is an advanced forward on attack duty. The player used here must be a goal scorer. As your team will have few scoring opportunities using this tactic, he must score most of them. As mentality, we have defensive, of course. In possession, fairly narrow, play out of the defense, slightly more direct, higher tempo and frequently waste time. Play for set pieces and be more disciplined. Helenio Herrera had a principle for his attack. No more than 3 passes until his team reached the opposition's goal. This is what we try to recreate. A high-paced, direct and lethal attack. You could go with a more direct passing, however, I have tried it, and the players seem to send too many balls over the top to the attack. Slightly more direct seems to be more balanced. In transition, regroup, play on counter, slow pace down and distribute to the defense. out of possession, mid block and much higher defensive line. I can see your amazed expression. Yes, much higher defensive line as we want to make a compact midfield shape hard to break through. You could go lower, however, this will give the opponent more space to work with in their build-up. By playing with a mid block and high defensive line, we force them to go over our defense most of the times. This is why I said that positioning is very important. If the players take on the best defensive positions, the tactic will not suffer. Trigger press less often and get stuck in. To play a defensive tactic doesn't mean having as many players as you can in your own half, playing a low block with much lower defensive line, or even playing on very defensive or defensive mentality. As Elenio Herrera said, everyone understood his Catenaccio tactic wrong. He emphasized a lot the attacking part of his tactic. To make a defensive tactic work, you must be sure that when you have the ball, you are dangerous and score most of your chances. The tactic worked very well for me. Not as well as the last one, but it made us overachievers again. But I would like to know how it worked for you. Did you do better than me? Let's unlock the next one. The last two videos saw two tactics recreations from Roberto De Zerbi's tactic and Elenio Herrera's Catenaccio. Both made Brighton overachievers. But can this video's tactic recreation bring the same results? To find out more about the tactic, we need to go back in time to the 1920s, to a team called Arsenal and a man called Herbert Chapman, who has a statue also, by the way. Herbert Chapman implemented and had great success with the WM formation. To implement this tactic, you need to make sure that the players you are using have good ratings for work rate and teamwork. And, of course, role-related attributes also. But all within the boundaries of what you can afford for your team and depending on the level you manage at. You need these two attributes to have high ratings, as the players must interpret the tactic very well and work for the team. If these are non-existent, the tactic will crumble. To create the formation used by Herbert Chapman, we will need to think outside the box, as the game is not that flexible. To create a WM formation, we will use a 3-2-2-3 or a 3-4-3 formation. We will use two center backs that in game will go up when the team is in possession and will become the wing backs, this way creating the WM. Sweeper keeper on attack duty in goal, two wide center backs, one on support and one on defend, and one central defender on defend duty. As mentioned, the wide center backs will help the possession game, while the central defender will be the cover in the defense. One halfback on defend and one deep line playmaker for the first midfield pivot. The halfback will cover the defense, while the deep line playmaker will be the focal point for starting the attacks from the back. A creative player with good passing attributes is needed here. Two mezzale on attack duty. And yes, mezzale is the plural for mezzala. These two players need to be creative, dynamic and take very good decisions. They form the second midfield pivot and will go up to the attack, overloading the opposition's defense. In the end, forming a 5 players attack almost every time. On the wings, we have an inside forward on attack on the left side and an inverted winger on support on the right one. My recommendation is that both have cuts inside from the flank they play on as a player trait. And an advanced forward on attack completes the formation. As player instructions, we have none, as the roles offer very good instructions. But tweak them according to your team's needs. As mentality, we go with positive, as we need to be on the front foot. In possession, fairly narrow, shorter passing directness and a slightly higher tempo. Play for set pieces and be more expressive. In transition, regroup, as we constantly have 5 players attacking, so the chances for a counter-attack against us are high. Counter, distribute quickly to the defense and roll it out. Out of possession, mid-block and a standard defensive line. Pressing slightly more often, get stuck in, trap outside and stop crosses. We need to trap teams outside and stop crosses, as we play with 3 at the back in a narrow formation, and stretching them would mean a weaker defense in the box. You will be the judge of the results yielded in my save. But I'm curious, how did the tactic work for you? Did you get better results? Let's unlock the next one. To make Xavi's FC Barcelona tactic work, you need to have players capable of holding onto the ball and pass it around at their own will. The tactic is similar to Roberto De Zerbi's one, but at a whole new level. Xavi loves having possession of the ball. In his own philosophy, the ball moves faster than the man, so the ball is the most important element to his tactic. The players you use need to have very good ratings for passing, technique and vision. Passing, as they need to be able to pass the ball around, technique, as they need to be able to complete the most complex passes, and vision, as they need to have perspective on their game. Of course, role-related attributes are needed. I did try several different versions of this tactic to make it work, and I have ended up with this one. A 4-3-3 formation designed to keep hold of possession and make the most of it. Sweeper keeper on attack duty in goal. No instructions for him. 2 wingbacks, one on support and one on attack duty. Both have stay wider as player instructions. The left wingback is on attack duty as he will go higher up the pitch. We will see in a moment why. 2 ball-playing defenders on defend duty. No player instructions for them, but they must be defenders capable of bringing the ball out of defense. A defensive midfielder on defend. He will screen the defense and become the third man when the team is attacking. 2 mezzale, one on support and one on attack duty. The mezzala role is used here for both players, as in Xavi's tactic, these players are dynamic. They don't have a fixed role. They can drift wide, interchanging positions with the wingers, they can go up in the opponent's box or even swap places with the striker if needed. No instructions for them. As wingers, we have a winger on support duty. This is Ousmane Dembele's role. The trick here is that the player can use his left foot very well and has cut inside from the right wing as a player trait. This way, he can either be a winger and drag the opposing defender onto him, or can cut inside and surprise the defense, creating chaos. On the left side, the inside forward on attack has a roam from position as a player instruction. This player changes position with the mezzala on his side during attacks, and this is what we try to recreate. This is why the wingback on his part must get further up the pitch to become an extra player in attack. In front, a complete forward makes up the tactic, no instructions for the striker. As mentality, we go with positive. In possession, fairly wide, play out of defense, slightly shorter passing and slower tempo. Play for set pieces and be more expressive. In transition, distribute quickly, to defense and roll it out. Xavi does not instruct his players to counter press or play on counter, but he wants them to do so when the moment arises. Thus, we will let the game decide when these instructions are fit to be used. Out of possession, high press and a higher defensive line. Make sure to use pacey defenders with a higher defensive line. Press more often, prevent goalkeeper short distribution and get stuck in. We will instill the pressing game using these instructions. Playing using this tactic reminded me a lot of Xavi as a player. This tactic resembles his style and it is no wonder it worked so well for FC Barcelona last season. You will be the judge of the results yielded in my save, but I'm interested to know, how did it work for you? Did you get better results? Let's unlock the next one. Is that Louis van Gaal changed his formation from a usual 4-3-3 to a 3-5-2 for his World Cup 2022 Netherlands team. This was probably done to accommodate the types of players he had in the team at the time. And this is crucial, because this tactic will not work as intended if you don't have the players to perform it. We start with a sweeper keeper on attack, no instructions for him. 2 wide center backs, one on support and one on defend, plus a central defender on defend make up the back 3. No instructions for them, as the wide center backs have embedded the stay wider instruction, while the central defender is already instructed to hold position. In the midfield, I went with the defensive midfielder on support and the segundo volante. Here you can experiment a lot. This combination of roles worked for me, but you have plenty to choose from and implement the ones that work the best for your team. No instructions for them. The important thing is to keep one player as defensive-minded and one as a more attacking-minded one. On the wings, I experimented with the defensive winger on support on the right side and the wide midfielder on attack on the left side. Here as well, you could go with a combination that fits your team best. The wide midfielder has cross more often and stay wider as instructions. The front 3 is made of an attacking playmaker on support duty. This player links the midfield with the attack, no instructions for him. A deep line forward and a complete forward for the strikers. Instead of the complete forward, you could use an advanced one. The idea is that the duo to fulfill different responsibilities. No instructions for them. As mentality, I went with positive. In possession, fairly wide, play out of defense, slightly shorter passing directness and slightly higher tempo. Play for set pieces and be more expressive. Louis van Gaal prefers his team to build from the back and counter when possible. In transition, counter, distribute quickly to the defense and roll it out. and out of possession, mid-block, standard defensive line, press more often and get stuck in. This tactic is very interesting and Louis van Gaal is a great tactician. The way he made use of the talent available to him is worth noting on its own. As mentioned, without the proper players, you may struggle using this tactic. This happened to me. We did manage to reach the Champions League semi-final, but for the most part of the season, we were outclassed, as my wingers especially were not equipped for such a tactic. But do let me know how it worked for you. For sure you did better than me, right? Let's unlock the next tactic. And this is the 6th tactic recreated. In today's video, we'll explore the 4-3-3 formation, but be prepared to equip your team with players that can pass the ball around, counter-press and play on counter. Erik ten Hag's tactics are intense and he asks his players to recover the ball as soon as they lose it. To do so, you must have players that have a high rating for stamina. In addition, I would look for a very high rating for work rate and teamwork. Work rate determines the willingness of the players to work to full capacity, while teamwork influences how well the players interpret the tactic. Sweeper keeper on attack duty, no instructions for him. As wingbacks, we have a wingback on support on the right side and a wingback on attack on the left side. Both have stay wider as instructions. One ball playing defender and one central defender, both on defend duty. No instructions for them. One ball winning midfielder on defend duty. This is Casemiro's role. It is important that this player screens the defense. So a ball winning midfielder, an anchor, a halfback or a defensive midfielder all work here. No instructions for him. One Mezzala on attack and one roaming playmaker on support for the creative players. As wingers, we have an inverted winger on support on the right side and an inside forward on attack on the left side. No instructions for them. And the striker is a deep lying forward on support. He contributes to the attack by creating chances for the wingers and the Mezzala and then for himself. As mentality, we go with positive. In possession, fairly wide, play out of defense, shorter passing directness and standard tempo. Play for set pieces and be more expressive. In transition, counter press, counter, distribute quickly to the defense and roll it out. As mentioned, Erik ten Hag prefers his players to try and recover the ball fast and then immediately counter. Out of possession, high press, standard defensive line, press more often, prevent goalkeeper short distribution and get stuck in. You can be the judge of the results yielded in my save using this tactic recreation. In 6 seasons, using 6 different tactics created by brilliant managers, I managed to place 3rd in the Premier League's highest, twice 4th and once 5th, 6th and 7th managing Brighton. We won the FA Cup once and the Carabao Cup twice, and appeared once in the Champions League semi-final. I hope you had fun, I certainly did. I'll be waiting for your save stories down in the comment section. Until the next one, have fun and stay safe.